Hello everyone, my name is Shawn, and today I'll be talking about a new upcoming feature for clawing back your fungible tokens, or IOUs. And this will be a protocol level change to the XRP ledger, and will be part of the next RippleD release. And here's the agenda for today. I'm going to go over the motivations for implementing clawback on the ledger. And after that, I'm going to introduce what's implemented on the ledger, and at last, I'll show a demo of how to actually use it. So, the definition of clawback is an action where the issuer takes back the tokens they've issued to the holders. And it might sound scary at first, but in fact, it can save an issuer from legal jeopardy when funds are misdirected. And let's explore why this feature is important for the XRP ledger. So clawback has many benefits for token holders. It can be very helpful in scenarios where a holder needs to request the issuer to perform certain administrative actions for their funds. And let's look at some examples. So imagine a scenario where a token holder accidentally sends their token to a wrong address. And this is where clawback can help. The issuer can use clawback to help the holder to retrieve misplaced funds. But in the current XRP ledger, the issuer has no ability to do that. And now let's consider another scenario. So a token holder who has lost access to their account due to losing their password. Traditionally, or in the current XRP ledger, this would mean that their funds are effectively lost forever. However, with clawback in play, the issuer can now step in, recover the funds from the old account, and then transfer them to a new account that the holder created. So as you see, clawback introduces a level of flexibility and security that can make a huge difference in these situations that were irreversible in the past. And also clawback benefits the ledger from a compliance point of view, because in response to scandals, many regulatory bodies around the world have policies in place regarding clawback. And consequently, this feature has become very pivotal for institutions that seek to use the XRP ledger. And it's very crucial for use cases like central bank digital currency, or CBDC, which can use clawback to ensure fairness and compliance by recovering funds from transactions that are unauthorized or shouldn't have taken place. So overall, this new clawback functionality will motivate more institutions to embrace and adopt the XRP ledger. And now I'm going to talk about how clawback is presented on the XRP ledger. So the first change introduced is a new transaction type called clawback. And this transaction is what the issuer uses to clawback non-native tokens, meaning that it cannot clawback XRP. However, before the issuer is permitted to use this transaction, they must first set a flag, which leads to the second change we're going to look at. So this new account flag is called Allow Trustline Clawback. And as you can tell from the name, clawback has an opt-in mechanism, meaning that initially this feature is turned off by default. And in order to activate and use this feature, the issuer needs to set this flag, which is also a permanent flag, meaning that once it has been set, it cannot be unset. And the main idea behind this design is to protect all the current token holders on the XRP ledger. This means that those who are already part of the ecosystem won't experience any sudden changes due to the introduction of clawback. And this is a way of protecting the interest of these existing holders who might have concerns about this feature. And in addition, there are two more restrictions that come along with this flag that also favor the holders. So the first restriction is if the no freeze flag has been set, then trying to set allow trust line clawback will fail. It's also worth noting that the no freeze flag is a permanent setting that cannot be reversed. So when an issuer chooses to disclaim the ability to freeze or touch user funds by setting no freeze, it would be really contradictory to give them the power to clawback funds, because clawback is an even more powerful feature than freeze. So with this restriction in place, it means that as long as the account has set no freeze, then they will not have the ability to enable clawback at all. And the second restriction is if the issuer's owner directory is not empty, then trying to set allow trust line clawback will also fail. This means that the issuer can't just suddenly or silently toggle on this flag without notifying the token holders. And this is because fungible tokens live on the ledger in the form of ledger objects. So as long as there still exists a holder for that particular token, then the issuer cannot enable clawback at all on their account. So this restriction reassures the trust relationship between the holder and the issuer, making sure that the issuer cannot perform actions that could ultimately hurt or harm the holders. And now I'm going to show a basic demo of how to use clawback on the ledger. So I'm just going to walk through the code, so I think it would be easier to see. So there are a couple of requirements before we start. So the client library, which we're going to use, XRPL.js, must have at least version 2.10. And also, clawback is now only live on the DevNet server, so anyone could feel free to try it out. So the first step, we're going to do some setup. So we're going to open a WebSocket connection to the DevNet. And then we're going to open up two wallets, one being the issuer and other being the holder. And after setting up the accounts, the first step we want to do is to enable clawback for the issuer through an account set transaction. And as you can see in the bolded code, the issuer is the one submitting this transaction. And what they're trying to do is that they're trying to set the allow trust line clawback flag. And if you guys remember from earlier, there are two restrictions that come along with this flag. But since in our case, the accounts we're using are brand new, so they don't have any existing flags, and they don't own any ledger objects. So we're going to be sure that this transaction will go through. And so the next step is something that the issuer would do from their side, which is to trust. It's something that holder needs to do from their side, which is to trust the issuer. Right? This is essentially setting up the fungible token, so it's nothing new here. And the holder will be submitting this trust set transaction. And if we see in the limit amount, the holder is saying that they're willing to hold up to €1,000. And it's really important that before the holder submits this transaction, they should do research about the trustworthiness of the issuer to make sure that they have a good reputation and that they're not bad actors. So after the holder has trusted to hold some euro, now the issuer can now finally send some money to the holder. And here, issuer is the one submitting this payment transaction. And as you can see in the amount field, they are sending over €1,000 to the holder. And after this transaction is successful, right, the holder address will now own €1,000. And at last, let's say the issuer wants to claw back from the holder for a good reason. So here the issuer is submitting the clawback transaction, And in the amount field, they're saying that they want to take away 700 euro from the holder. And there's also one small detail to keep in mind is that in the issuer subfield here, we're actually placing holder's address instead. So it's better to consult the documentation before using this. And we can actually open up the XRP Explorer to see the transactions results ourselves. So here right now, I'm on an issuer account that's exactly the result of the code I just demoed. So let's take a look at the transaction history. So there are 5 transactions in total, and the first payment is the transaction that funds the account. The second transaction here it enables the clawback on this issuer account. And the third transaction is the trust set transaction. So it's having some trouble loading, but that's okay. So it's something that's sent from the holder's account, and we can still see it because it's related to the issuer. And the fourth transaction is the payment which sent 1,000 euro to the holder. And at last, we come to the clawback transaction, which clawed back 700 euro from the holder. And if we're really curious, we can check how much money the holder owns after all of these transactions. So this is the holder's account, and if we switch currency, we can see that the holder now owns exactly 300 euro, which is the correct amount after the issuer clawed back 700 from them. And at last, just a quick note, I know in this demo, the issuer clawed back from the holder directly after they sent some tokens, but in the conventional flow, let's say the issuer detected some suspicious activities going on with the holder, the first step here wouldn't usually be a clawback, but rather the issuer would freeze holders' funds first for investigation, meaning that the holder can no longer transfer these tokens to other accounts. And if the holder is truly involved in these illegal activities, then the issuer can decide whether they should take action to claw back the funds or not. And this is what I have for today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
First question.
Hi, thank you. It's a great talk. So when the issuer creates assets that can be clawed back, can these assets be traded on the decentralized exchange?
Yes, these can be. So for example, I know there's AMM. So if, let's say, the asset can be clawed back and they're deposited into the AMM pool, that means these assets that have been deposited can't be clawed back, but rather it's only the spendable amount that can be clawed back. So if in the future, if it's something that is really needed, then that could be done through later amendments.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, with regard to the Hooks network or the Wahoo network, with URI tokens, would that be something that could be clawed back because that's an actual ledger object, even though it's still an NFT?
You mean URI?
Yeah.
Is there a URI token?
Well, it's a different implementation of NFTs that doesn't use pagination on the new network.
Yeah. So, sorry, could you rephrase your question? Like whether the clawback can support or?
Yeah. So would clawback support anything, even the like URI NFTs?
No. So right now the clawback only supports Trustline, which is the fungible tokens, IOUs. So to answer your question, no. So this amendment will not cover NFTs or URI tokens.
Okay, thanks.